Welcome to 5 Good Minutes. You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Mark with Kurt Bjorklund.
Mark 4 ends with the miraculous story of Jesus calming the sea again. And here's what it says, verse 35. On that day, when evening came, he said to them, "Let's go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in a boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat so that the boat was already filling. And he was in the stern asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said, "Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, "Who is this then, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Certainly, this is a revelation of Jesus' character. But notice that this storm that came up was sudden, verse 37, that it was something that arose in the waves, and it was severe, and it was unexpected. And certainly metaphorically in our lives, storms are severe, they're sudden, they're unexpected. That's the definition in some ways of a hardship. You know, it's the lab report that you didn't expect. It's the termination that you didn't see coming. It's the divorce that you had hoped you could avoid. And all of a sudden you're in this place where you say, "Where is God?" And here God calms the storm. But sometimes our tendency is to say, God is asleep. He's not at work. But God shows up here and says, "Why are you afraid? Don't you have faith? Haven't you seen who I am by now? Because if you had, you would know that even when things look bleak, they are in my hand." And part of this story being preserved, I believe, is to remind people of faith of every generation that when storms come, those storms are not the final answer. Sometimes when we're in the middle of something, we start to feel as if this is what is defining, and it's as if this account has been given to us to just simply say, you need to know that you will come to the other side. Now, again, in earthly storms, that doesn't mean that every time we pray we get the answer we want or that the outcome is the outcome we hoped for. But what it does mean is that God has never abandoned you in a storm. God will never leave you in a place where his power is not more powerful. And his goodness means that he's at work in ways that are going to bring about good ends. You know, I've been a pastor for a couple decades now, and I've walked with people in some pretty hard times. And one of the things that I have observed is that people's faith is revealed in a storm. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people think they have great faith, but their faith was in that God wouldn't allow a storm. So when God allows a storm, there's a crisis of faith. And other people have this sense that says, I know that God is somehow working and that God is not forgotten or abandoned me. And the storm actually reveals what's real inside the heart and the kind of faith that each person has. And it's interesting in this chapter that it starts with the parable and says that some people have shallow faith, and they have this sense that when their seed is sown in the rocky ground, that it springs up, but there's no depth of soil. And in the comment about it, it says they endure for a while, but in a time of tribulation or persecution, they fall away. What we need is not just greater grit in our faith, but a greater sense of who God is. Because there will be persecution, trials, hardship. And if your perception of God is God will never allow that to his people, you will be devastated by it. But if your perception is God is faithful to walk with me in it and has power is on display in the midst of it, then you will be able to navigate the persecutions, the hardships, the trials with a faith that is bigger than simply saying, God, do something, but is saying God is doing something. And He is great, even in the midst of this moment that doesn't feel like it.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.